Hello, and welcome back to Conscious Caregiving with L&L, where we're tackling the tough conversations. The topic this month is myths, stigmas, lies, and seniors. Welcome, everyone, to Conscious Caregiving with L&L. I am your co-host, Lance A. Slatton, as well as the host of All Home Care Matters and the co-host of the Caregivers Journal and the author of the All Home Care Matters Official Family Caregivers Guide. I have the distinct privilege of co-hosting the show with Lori LeBay. Welcome, Lori. How are you today?
I am doing fantastic, and I can't wait to talk about this topic with, lies and myths and stigmas regarding seniors. I think it's so important. For those of you that don't know me, my mom lived with dementia for 30 years, and that's kind of what got me into the healthcare space. I created Alzheimer's Speaks, which has all different types of resources, and also Dementia Map, which is a global resource directory that we're building out. We'd love you to be part of that. And I too authored a book called Betty the Bald Chicken: Lessons in How to Care. So that kind of sums me up, I guess.
Oh, a lot more could be said about you, Lori, but I appreciate that. I want to welcome our guests, though, our panelists today. We have an all-star panel. First, we'll start with Tracy Cram-Perkins. She is the author of Dementia Home Care: How to Prepare Before, During, and After. Welcome, Tracy.
Thank you, Lance. I am a 4-time dementia caregiving survivor, and I wrote the book Dementia Home Care: How to Prepare Before, During, and After because my father asked me a very important question. He asked me, what does it take to be treated like a human being? I am also the host of the Dementia Home Care Show on USA Global TV, and it is my mission to teach people who are doing caregiving simple fixes so that they can survive and thrive during caregiving.
Wonderful. Well, thank you for being here and for all that you're doing, Tracy. Next, I would like to go to Sam Simon. Sam is a playwright, producer, and actor. And Sam, it's a pleasure to have you here with us today. Thank you so much.
Thank you for having me. I'm sort of the other side of the coin, so to speak. I was diagnosed in 2022 with early stage Alzheimer's. And my response after folding up and trying to decide what to do was to write a play. Now, I was in the care partner side of this bigger journey because my first play was called The Actual Dance, which was my journey as the care partner of my wife, who was fine, Susan, who went through advanced breast cancer, but there was the moment when the doctors pulled me over and said, get ready. And so we're unique in that sense in some ways. But I'm performing and I'm privileged to be able to still get on stage. And my wife is my care partner, what we call a care navigator, rather. And we're touring the country. So I'm delighted to be here, and particularly on this topic. And thank you for focusing on these issues of the myths and there's a whole negative side of these diseases.
Right. Well, thank you for being here, Sam, and thank you, Tracy. I want to start off with going to Tracy to kind of talk about some of the myths, stigmas, and lies associated with this for our seniors. Let's approach this whole stigma, Tracy, and the myths and the lies from a medical angle, as I know you've run into some issues caring for your loved ones. Have you ever had some major medical surprises with treatment or billing that you felt were just unfair?
Yes. Not necessarily billing, but definitely with treatment.
Mm-hmm.
We had several let me start with my father. Because we didn't have power of attorney, he had gone into a coma. And when he came to, he was diagnosed with moderate Alzheimer's disease. And they didn't believe that if they released him to our care, that he wouldn't be back in the hospital in 3 days. So they shunted him into the system. And it was a 5-month battle to try and get him out and into our care. So that was the first shocker. The next one had to do with my uncle, and he ended up being kicked out of the hospital a couple of times because of inaccurate. He was dying, and they didn't believe he was dying. And there was no conversation between the oncologist, who was the one that said, you are dying, we're trying to put you into hospice, versus the floor staff doctor who just released him into a rehab facility. And the rehab facility did not believe him when he said that he didn't feel well and needed to go back to the hospital. And it was a 12-hour polite argument with the staff to try to get them to call for an ambulance so that we could get him there and have Medicare pay for it. Otherwise, it would have been out of his own pocket. And by this time, his cancer treatment had pretty much drained most of his savings.
Wow. Did something happen when your aunt reached, there's a cap, 911 calls for emergency room visits? What, did you know there was a cap, and how did you find this out? Like, what is that story all about? Because I found that really fascinating, but also terrifying.
It is terrifying, and it was a shocker. I had heard a rumor that there was a financial cap on 911, but I had never experienced it because all of my family members to that point had not reached it. My aunt believed that the ER made her feel better. And it was true because she was having a series of heart attacks and they would take care of her. However, after the last heart attack, social services came in to me and said, we have reached the 911 cap. Now, this is while she's actually staying at a SNF, a skilled nursing facility. And so they came in and they told me, now she was not conscious. She was asleep at the time when they were telling me this. So I had to break it to her later. She also had dementia. So she didn't remember necessarily that this has happened. So they told me they were going to take her off of rehab and we had to find a skilled care facility with memory care for her. And we had 5 days. What they didn't tell us is that when they took her off of the rehab, the Medicare didn't pay for anything anymore. And the clock started ticking and we only had 2 days that they would pay for. And then she had to become private pay. So fortunately, I have a friend that told me that Washington State has a law preventing them from discharging someone on a Sunday. So we got 1 extra day. And thanks to a place for mom, we were able to find some place for her to land in a 3-day period as opposed to whatever else we would have to do. So it was a very difficult challenge. I had to divide and conquer with my sisters, and we had to start calling and visiting places till we could find some place for her to land, not knowing what was going to happen or if she was going to have to pay out of pocket.
Wow. Wow. Well, let's talk about some skilled nursing facilities. Did you have any issues with any of your family living in skilled care?
Yes.
How many family members are we talking about?
3 of my family members ended up in skilled care.
Wow.
The only one that didn't was my uncle. Well, he did it the last week of his life. But for the most part, my mother had cancer and the treatment caused her dementia. It was from the anesthesia, from the surgery. She ended up going, after she'd lived with my dad for a long time, she went to a group home, which is because they wouldn't allow her to go on either palliative care or hospice. Mm-hmm. So, and they were also on Medicaid. So we had to find some place that she could land. She was at the group home. And I didn't understand anything about group homes at the time. They only had 1 staff member during the day and 1 staff member during the night. And the gal that was working with them, there were 6 patients. The person in the bed next to her had jaundice and was dying from liver cancer. And so my mom wasn't getting turned enough in her bed, and she developed in a 30-day period basically holes at the base in her skin, and we could see through her spine. And the hospice nurse was coming in at that point, saw that she had this issue, and the place kicked us out. They told us, you have to get out. We don't have enough staff to take care of you. So it was a bit of a shock. And fortunately, the hospice nurse was standing there when this was happening, and she found a place for us that we were able to get her transferred to within 24 hours, which obviously the hand of God was working on that one, because there's no way we would have known where to search because that was our very first person. Then the worst one, though, was with my aunt. We were in assisted living memory care. It was not skilled care. And it was trying to get my aunt to consent to going on hospice. She'd had really bad experiences with her mom and her aunt on hospice. And so she believed that hospice was a death sentence. I mean, like that they were just going to come in and kill her is what she thought. Again, this is the dementia that was at play here. So they told her she had to leave, and I only had a week to find someplace. I was able to beg, plead, bring in as many people as I could to convince them to let her stay until I could get her onto hospice and stay in that room. Now, she had a private pay room that she was paying them for, and it was a double room. So they would have been giving up 12 grand a month for this room. So we got her into hospice, but then the med techs did not want to give her some of the medications that were being prescribed to alleviate the pain. And that became another issue. It wasn't that the medication was prescribed, they just refused to give it. So that's another thing that is very, very challenging. And we could not convince them. Now, they gave her it's one step below morphine, and I've forgotten the name of the drug. But
Demerol?
they gave her, no, not Demerol. Okay, I'll think of it later. I'm sorry. But they gave her a drug to alleviate the pain, but not to help with her breathing because she was on oxygen. And so she was gasping for air. She was calling for help. Help. Well, you could just hear all the way down the hall, and the staff was not coming in to check on her as often as they should. So my sisters and I took time off, and we were sitting with her to make sure that she was getting taken care of.
It's so tragic. And, the sores you're talking about are classified as decubitus ulcers. And I mean, those are the worst thing that you can contract. And they're usually contracted when you are in a facility because the patient resident is lying. And if they're not able to turn or move themselves, those pressure sores develop and they turn into tunnels. It's just a very, very unpleasant thing. I'm sorry your family had to go through that, Tracy. We're talking about the myths, stigmas, and lies, in your book, Dementia Home Care. What is your opinion, or what did you find that you feel is one of the biggest myths out there regarding Alzheimer's and dementia?
That's a good question. Well, first of all, it's not a death sentence. We discovered that there was so much more that everyone has a fear of getting dementia, and they don't understand the components of dementia. And so everyone kept saying, "Oh, your life is over," to my dad, and he didn't understand that. And we made sure that we kept him going, had activities for him, and didn't just say, "Oh, I'm putting you in the cupboard under the stairs," like a lot of people do. I'm exaggerating now, but they just figure it's over. Okay, you're inconvenient for me, so we're going to put you over here. And there's so much more to life than that, and there's so much more that people can give. And it's but if you don't know that, and you don't have the tools, because that's the other part, is we don't teach people how to do care for dementia. It's kind of like how cancer used to be 15, 20 years ago, where no one talked about it. It was a shameful thing. And it's kind of that way with dementia now, or still, I should say, but it's getting better. I mean, with things that you're doing, what Lori's doing, calling attention to it and letting people know that there is more to life and that it doesn't just end with a diagnosis.
No, absolutely. And, I feel like people, the uneducated, the lay people, and sadly to an extent, even healthcare professionals, I think they help to perpetuate that sense of what dementia is. And in reality, people can still live a very meaningful life and contribute and be involved. And like you said with your dad, right, Sam? And you just put them in a box and put them in the cupboard, and it's like, no, there's so much that they can still do, and the person knows that they can do it, but if you had to pick one thing that really perpetuates stigma, what do you think that would be?
Oh, well, that is a good question too. The stigma that I ended up having was that everyone thought it was that we would want to be alone. They would stop visiting. They didn't know how to react to us because they were afraid of, well, A, people are afraid of dementia, but B, they didn't understand if they were being helpful or hurtful. So instead of learning how to help, they just withdrew and abandoned. And it wasn't their fault. It was just, not knowing. And my husband and I took the time to start teaching people how to take care of family members, how to take, how to come and visit, how to give us respite because we were doing 24/7 care. And it was a little challenging. And I think it's really what started the basis of my book is this. I just need to teach people that life isn't over. There's still meaning and you can still have fun together. Because my dad was really fun loving. I mean, and he was just fun to be around. Now, that doesn't mean there weren't times when he was having a really difficult time and sundowning and I didn't know what to do. And before I finally figured this out. But I think for people not understanding and withdrawing and the isolation it causes when there's so much more to it than that. And if we had more understanding of community, because we're so fractured now since the pandemic, that I think that would also extend the quality of life for both sides of the parties.
Yeah. Now let's go to lies. What is one of the biggest lies you hear about seniors?
In regards to dementia or just in general?
To dementia.
Yeah. Okay. Well, first of all, everyone thinks that they don't know what the difference is between dementia and Alzheimer's, and they just assume that you can eat tomatoes and cure it. I've heard that so many times recently. It's like it's one component of a diet that isn't a real cure. I've heard a lot of people saying they have an elixir to cure dementia, and I hate to perpetuate that myth too, because that's not, we didn't get to a disease by just not eating tomatoes or not. I mean, just that's not how a disease forms. So, and also we're still capable of doing things, maybe not to the level that we used to, but there's still, I mean, people can still do art or as Sam is doing, you can do plays. I mean, there's things that you can do, that people don't recognize. They just assume that once you are diagnosed with dementia, you can't participate.
Right. Well, and I want to, for me, real quickly, one of the lies and the myths that we hear constantly from families, because, we have a home care company and we deal with dozens and dozens of families on an almost weekly basis. And all the time, at least once or twice a month, somebody will say, no, my mom has Alzheimer's. She doesn't have dementia. And that one that to me is the failing of our healthcare system, because somebody gave that woman a diagnosis and said, unfortunately your mother has Alzheimer's or you have Alzheimer's. They need to explain at least the basic principle and fundamentals of dementia. And we say, well, no, you can have dementia, but you don't necessarily have to have Alzheimer's, but you can't have Alzheimer's and not have dementia. And, another thing you said too, Tracy, with, doctors and, healthcare professionals kind of treating it almost like the way cancer was years ago. I do feel like, and I've heard this from healthcare professionals, doctors don't want to be the one to give the diagnosis, because there's then, well, okay, doc, what can you do for me? What are you going to give me? Because then they don't have a real therapeutic way of treating it, in the sense of, okay, now we're, take these pills and you're going to be better in 30 days. So they don't want to have that sense of failure themselves, which I can appreciate, but I don't think it's doing anything to help the awareness of the disease or to help support the families with the disease. And it's very frustrating. Real quick, Tracy, before we go to Lori, what have you learned though through your journey of caring for the elders in your family? What is something you've really taken away from that?
Oh, no. Okay. I'm going to quote you in this one, that if you've seen one person with dementia, you've only seen one person with dementia.
True.
My family was so different. It was every single person. I mean, there were similarities, but behaviors were completely different. Reactions were completely different. Symptoms and signs were different, if that makes sense. I mean, each one of them reacted differently. My mom was first, and she was dying from cancer. And so none of us knew what we were doing, and so we did everything wrong. And my dad, I knew a little bit more, but not a lot. By the end, I knew a lot more. But it's so unique to each individual. There are tools, though, that you can, that we found that you can mix and match, kind of like, do you remember Richard Simmons' Deal-A-Meal? It's kind of like that with all of your, the the things you need to try to help them and encourage them and empower them. And they work for a little while and then they stop. And then you try something else. And it's kind of like that.
And I'm glad you brought that up, because I say that to families all the time, because invariably people think, well, because my dad had dementia, this is the way my mom's going to have. And I think that's one of the biggest myths for me, is that everybody with dementia, it's a one size fits all. And that is couldn't be further from the truth. So thank you for bringing that up. Last question before we go to Lori. When you look back at Tracy at the beginning, when you got that first diagnosis with your mom or, one of your family members, what would you, if you had the capability of traveling back in time and talking to Tracy from X amount of years ago to what you are now and who you are now, what would you tell Tracy back then?
I love that you asked me that question, because in 2017, I wrote myself a letter to my previous self as part of my therapy about what I would tell myself and that, even though it's difficult, that I could get through it and to forgive myself for the mistakes I made, because my family member would forget them. I would earn back their trust and we could move on. But at first it was so incredibly overwhelming that I literally, after everyone was gone, or I shouldn't say everyone, after 3 of my family members were gone, I wrote that letter to myself saying, forgive yourself, everything will work out, and you can do this.
That's wonderful and very beautiful too, Tracy. Well, Tracy, thank you so much. I'm going to go back to Lori now. Lori?
Oh my gosh, you made so many good points. And I saw Sam over there wanting to jump in, and we want to give you each your own time, but then we'll get to the chit chat. But I just made some notes because you covered a lot of ground, Tracy. You talked about, the myths and stigma of, well, they'll help you place. I mean, the medical, field will help you with that. And how many times were you like thrown into the fire going, they need to get out of here now, and not taking any responsibility. The myth of that, I think so often we hear, or some people will call it a lie, is they can stay here till end of life. And then all of a sudden, you're out the door. And those are questions that people don't even know to ask. It's just kind of that assumed thing, or that they're going to have enough staff to meet the needs. And then all of a sudden your person, has this horrible infection, not our fault, get them out of here. We don't want to be flagged, type deal. You talked about not believing family, like they're dying. We know our person. I went through that with my own dad. And they're like, well, no. And I just got angry. I'm like, you don't know my person. This is not normal, and really had to fight and advocate for that. And I look at all of this over the years of, especially when it comes to dementia or any chronic illness, we have been fed the doom and gloom. There is no hope. It's end of life. This is the way it is. And we really haven't been given the support that is available to us, even if it's not through a particular organization or corporation. They don't want to refer outside their own little circle. And we're thinking they're here to help us. They're tapped in. And, we're not seeing that. The myth that you are your diagnosis. You're nothing more than your diagnosis is how a lot of people are fed. And I know you said it. I'm sure Sam's going to say it. I know Lance believes it. I believe it. Any advocate will say, no, that is not correct. You are still a whole human being. The myth of, well, you want to be alone. You can handle this. And to me, that is an emotional kind of scapegoat that has been perpetuated by society to protect their emotions, because they're so uncomfortable being around it. It's like, no, this is what you want so that I don't have to deal with it, and have to come to a reality. And sometimes that's even within your own family as well. The Alzheimer's versus dementia, the how we're not educating people correctly. Like I can live with Alzheimer's, but dementia, no. I'm, because of that term, people, look at it as being demented instead of looking at it, as a category like cancer. Here's cancer, and here's all its little, little wings out here with all these types of things. People don't understand that. And then the other thing that hit me just towards the end with you, and I'm not sure in your letter if this is what you were referring to, but you talked about, forgiveness and stuff, but families always aren't on the same page. And we kind of assume our siblings, our aunts, our uncles, our parents, that everyone's going to think like us. And that can really cause a huge tangle town when it comes to care with that. So thank you for covering so many things. I'm sure that Sam is going to bring up some of those other things, but look at them from a little bit different angle. One, because, you've been hit, Sam, with your wife with breast cancer and, basically being told, she doesn't have long to live, and then yourself with dementia. And I do want to, before I get into my line of question, because I don't want to forget this, but Sam, I was so impressed on your Facebook page. You went in, and it was on July 7th. So if you go to Dementia Man on Facebook and go to his July 7th post, you ripped to shreds something that you watched and just listed all of the inaccurate facts, all of the misinformation that was out there. And I just thought, there is his Ralph Nader coming out, and you worked with him for so long in terms of protecting and honesty. So I appreciate, I really appreciated seeing that from you. But let's start with Sam. As far as myths, what is one of the biggest myths that you see? And I'm going to go first with Alzheimer's and dementia. What is one of the biggest myths that you see? And then we'll ask about cancer too, because that's out there as well.
So I need to be a bit of my contrarian. I'm known as a troublemaker. In my play, the theme is I've been a troublemaker my whole life, from having 4 sisters, 3 of them older than me. What else was I going to do in life that caused trouble? But I hate the word dementia. There is, by the way, a campaign to eliminate the word. I don't know if everybody knows this, but the federal government cannot use the word retarded in their documents. Mm-hmm. And there is a group of people who want the government to be prohibited from using the word dementia. In fact, the medical world has changed their phrasing. It's called the DSM, the book in which the medical world, the neurology world, categorizes neurological ailments. And DSM-5 changed it, as I understand, in 2013, a decade ago, from dementia to neurocognitive, neurocognitive decline, major or minor, or neurocognitive impairment, major or minor. Dementia is a demeaning word. I think it's at the source of some of the myths and some of the misunderstandings. Yet it is so popular. I call my play Dementia Man. I've been challenged. You think it's so bad and you call your play Dementia Man. But it is the popular and well-known word. I think the myth is that we're all late stage. That once you get the diagnosis, that you will be late stage. And the imagery is of someone who sort of stares at the sky and has a blank look on their face, and it's all over. The words and the disease do trigger, and Tracy was talking about it, a reaction in people. They don't want to be around it. And one of the most important needs, as I understand it now, is to avoid isolation for people like me. And the reaction is to stay away. That the popular reaction is, I don't want to be near. I've heard it from others. We've had people walk up. I mean, I can remember, it's like bright light in my mind, where I performed at a senior center and somebody walked up and said, we've just come here, but all his friends don't want to sit with him anymore. They don't want to be around him anymore. And to the extent we can encourage people to be there, even if somebody is more advanced. But when I tell somebody, and I'm not shy about it, I'm loud and proud of having Alzheimer's. Sounds silly, but it is a part of me. It is part of who I am. And so when I mention it and people, I get to, oh no, oh, that's so terrible. Well, tomorrow I turn 79. I'm going to get something one day and get sick. And, it isn't, in my experience, it took me a minute, speaking now from the patient side, and you get the diagnosis. And we can certainly agree on how hard it is for most neurologists to give that diagnosis. But, what should I do now? What's my future? It took me a little while not to want to fold up and just stay in my room, and to, I'm lucky enough to have written another play, to have a very supportive, and, my wife did work for 14 years in an assisted living facility. I laugh sometimes. She was in elementary school when I was younger. And I said she treated me like a kid, and we stayed together. Now she's treating me like one of her patients and taking care of me now. But no, we're having, and I want to, before it's all over, talk about the myth of being a burden to your family. That is one of my biggest concerns, that people get told or believe that their disease, their cognitive decline, which is, yes, Alzheimer's includes cognitive decline, but there are many kinds. Alzheimer's is a disease. And your cognitive decline may be mild or significant or advanced. And it's just so many myths in that way about it. And I forgot, there was a big point I was going to make. I got separated, but this idea that it's just the end of the world and go hide. What I'm doing, which I've learned since, is what I'm supposed to do. Find ways to have purpose and meaning in my life. My life wasn't over, though it felt it for a moment. And, I know I was talking about the burden issue too, but I'm so grateful for the ability to have my artistic and other community. So I wrote a play called The Actual Dance. And there's a book, by the way, called The Actual Dance, Love's Ultimate Journey Through Breast Cancer. But it was my story about getting ready to hold someone I loved as they took their last breath. But I was in an artistic community. I have colleagues who are artists, and they were the ones that right away said, right, I told them, they said, write about it. And that really helped put me on a good path. And so I'm frankly, I've been stunned by how well the play is received. I don't know if whether I'm a good actor, but it is unusual. I don't know any other person with Alzheimer's who is on stage today. Most of the places I interact with are the care partner. And I will say one thing that I have understood. So I was a care partner. I call it love partner. I was Susan's caretaker when she, her first visit with an oncologist was post double mastectomy, and he found a new lump. How's that for bad news? But I, I think the role of care partner, which you talked about, Tracy, with this disease is magnitude of order more challenging than even, at least in my cancer. Susan was always Susan. I lived off her strength often. She was strong. She was determined. I see it even when it is so hard often to be there when the person you're caring for is somebody new, somebody different. And, in the play, I say, this Sam one day will go away and there'll be a new person, another Sam. If I live long enough to do that, that'll be true. But it's another person in me. It's not something new. I'll just be someone new. I will always be human.
But don't you think, and to me, this is one of the big mistakes we make, is we are all constantly evolving. We all become anew, and this is just another stage. I want to pull you back, though, because you had mentioned that there's a new word, kind of a new movement to get rid of the word dementia. Do you know what that word is that they're pushing for?
No, I think they're all into the either neurocognitive or cognitive decline, cognitively impaired. Those are medical words. The challenge is they don't. Dementia has a long history. It rolls off the tongue. It's everywhere, and it's going to be hard to replace in common parlances and conversations. I think it's important to do it, though. I think it's worth the effort because I think it will affect self-image, for the person with it, and it will help work against this tragedy narrative that's out there.
Yeah. When I first stepped into this, which was in 2009, everything was Alzheimer's, everything. The word dementia was rarely used. And then there was and then people were like, yes, we need a new word. Everything's not Alzheimer's. We have to change that, which is true because there's all these different types of diseases under that umbrella word. And then, there was a big push of, no, we can't use that word. And, I think there'll be a big pushback, if we switch to the whole neurocognitive decline or impairment. There's always going to be people that aren't going to be satisfied with the word. And one of the points that you brought up that I thought was really interesting, and I used to work with the developmentally disabled or the mentally retarded back in the day. And you had said, they can't use that term mentally retarded anymore. And they switched that to developmentally disabled or something similar.
There's a neurodiversity phrase, which had more to do with accommodation, I think, than the medical side of it. I want to say the medical side of dementia / neurocognitive decline is also badly broken. And I think Tracy is a good observer or experienced in that. I experienced that. And, don't want to get too off topic, but our first neurologist, it's like he didn't want to have to deal with it. He basically, at the point it was, you're mildly cognitively impaired. And I said, well, what's my treatment plan? He basically said, there isn't one. You're just going to get worse. Now I've got to leave the room. And we changed, and we've got a new neurologist. But I just saw this earlier this week, and they still struggle with it. And I have empathy for a medical professional who's dealing with somebody who has a terminal disease. And by the way, I just want to be clear. I understand that Alzheimer's is not curable. Now, that doesn't mean you'll die from that, because at 79 and I'm early stage and I'm doing really well at the moment. Not to get too personal, but earlier this year, I was diagnosed with prostate cancer. How about that? Walking around the world, and I'm in watchful waiting for that. I don't know. I'm 79. Hopefully, I have many years of with both of this, but I'm getting towards that age where the average or typical end of life is. Maybe I'll even live longer than that, which is another point. It isn't. It's just another. It is another thing. I do want to. I hope I'm not going to go too far afield there, but I'm going to say something. I just lost a friend recently, about 10 days ago. Her name is Lynn Fielder. And Lynn taught me something that I think is very relevant to this conversation. Lynn had Parkinson's at the age of 30, had brain stimulation. She was 62 when she passed. The first time, and I served on the board, by the way, I've been very active in the disability movement. I was on the board of directors of the World Institute on Disability for 15 years, and that's where I met Lynn. And the first day we met her, she took me out to lunch and said, Sam, I am not poor Lynn with this terrible disease. I am Lynn Fielder with Parkinson's, and I'll be the best of that the world has ever seen. And ultimately, I am Sam Simon with Alzheimer's, and I will be the best of that it can be. But I learned that from some really exceptional people. So I want to tip of my hat to Lynn here in her memory, but it is so hard to find that place. And it is part of it is that tragedy narrative, the, oh no, I'm so sorry. And then you were talking about that people tend to stay away. I mean, one of our big challenges, we had always say we're going to stay in our home. We're never going to leave. But even now, we're beginning to think differently. We don't get out as much. We have some neighbors, but we're, even I'll go out to perform but everyday interactions, it's Susan and I, and we're holding on. We're not killing each other yet. But so this need to be engaged and have people in your world and in community, I can see that you have choices in good facilities. You can have friends, you'll have colleagues, you have things you can go to. We're here, well, we went to one car recently. And so again, mobility. And so I'm a little bit off key. Let me get back to you, Lori.
Okay. Well, I wanted to make a couple of points because, and I'm going to go back to verbiage when you said neurodiverse versus like Alzheimer's or dementia. And neurodiverse opens up the whole realm to ADHD and all kinds of things. And it makes us more similar because bottom line, no two brains are the same, period. They're just not. So that's a more friendlier term. And that term, I think, would educate more people on all the possibilities. Plus, it opens up the door to another myth, stigma, or lie, depending on how you want to position it, that once you get a diagnosis, that's what it's going to stick with. And that is not true, especially with dementia. A lot of people get diagnosed with Alzheimer's, and then all of a sudden they're told, no, it's MCI. And, oh, you know what? We think it's Lewy body now. Or, you
Yes.
have the trifecta. We think you have 3 of the different types of dementias out there. Or like with you, now all of a sudden I've got prostate cancer too. Life goes on and it's constantly changing. I loved your story about your friend saying she will be the best she can be with this. And to me, it's like that is one of our downfalls is we are not mentoring people to live their best lives. We are setting them up to think the only thing that is going to help their life is a pill, is a cure. And so people are hanging on to that hope that there is a pill that's going to fix this. Well, even look at cancer. It might not be a pill, it might be radiation, it might be chemo, but they are mixing up those cocktails constantly with treatment. And it works for some and it doesn't work for others. And so I wanted to take you into another realm of treatment because, again, in your segment on July 7th, you talk about there is not a cure, and people are outright stating there's a cure, and what are your thoughts on that? I mean, I would imagine that gets your dander going.
It does. And, it's part of there's a fraudulent world out there. I don't know that. What was it? So I got MCI was my first diagnosis. Then we found out why I had MCI. I had Alzheimer's disease. I had a disease. MCI is a state of mind. And so the first thing I did is I go to Dr. Google. And there was the wife who said, here's my soup. My husband had Alzheimer's and he ate my soup and he's well now, 1995 for my soup. I mean, those are extreme. They're out there still. And I heard, so I'm willing to say the channel, CNN had a special on the state of Alzheimer's. There's also an article in the New York Times too recently. But there are a lot of things that are good for everybody. People don't always get, there's a slight curve on this, but people often don't get diagnosed. It's expensive, it's hard, it's normal aging, and there are things you can do, even if you're not sick, to have a healthy senior lifestyle. Exercise, a good and healthy diet. There are advocates for vegan, there are advocates for keto. I don't think any one diet is going to do, but I used to smoke. I'm 165. I used to be 250. I didn't live a healthy lifestyle. Now, I have a genetic marker for Alzheimer's, by the way, but I don't know whether these other things contributed to it. But we are where we're at. What we want to be is wherever we are, move to the healthiest person, whether we have a disease or not. And that takes a lot of things and determination. But in this CNN segment, I heard one of the people on it, while they're advocating for exercise and good diet, somebody said, and his Alzheimer's was cured. And that's just wrong. And particularly any entity that has that kind of, news or reputation, it drives me up the wall. I don't know if we know enough about, and it all depends on what your unique, as you said, everybody is, if you know one, you only know one. Yes, that we're all different. So you go and you look and you do and try to find the things. I want to add to this conversation is leading a meaningful life. I'm going to get at the bottom of all of this. And that includes being respected, watching out for those myths and those outright frauds. And, there's a book out there. There's a Dr. Bredesen. I don't know if anybody knows the name. It's called The End of Alzheimer's. And then the program is called The Last Alzheimer's Patient. Yes, we want to end Alzheimer's. That's goal. Claiming that there is a solution right now, which brings me to another point. There is another narrative out there, which drives me nuts. It's in fact one of the impetuses for my play, is that life with this disease is not worth living, and a call to accompanied suicide. And then there is the other side of that same call, is I don't want to be a burden to my family. I don't know, Tracy, I'm not going to put you on the spot, but I think what you did was acts of love, and that caring for those in your family, it's amazing that you have so many that you were involved with, is what love really means. And my point in my play is what I want to be in the end is, well, first of all, I do view this, both sides of this, Susan's and my side, are ultimately a journey of love for both of us. the ultimate act of love is caring for somebody you love through their last breath. And there's another side of that, and allowing them to care for you. And that you enable them to experience that, and that itself is an act of love. And it's complicated. It isn't always intuitive that that's the case, but encouraging that and giving couples especially the opportunity to be in that. I'm lucky. We'll be August 23rd. We'll be married 58 years. You know, it's hard for me to even. I remember our second year. I remember our first year, and how time has passed. But, there are these tragedy narratives that are thrown at everybody, and they can't imagine that. Yes, people need time to be free. So Susan has cohorts. She has worked in the field. She knows she has a group of people she needs to meet with. She knows she needs time off sometime. And, you know, we are in support groups, encouraging people to do that and find things, are ways to help deal with it. But be careful what you listen to and get confirmations. I think neurologist offices, and we found our neurologist has started to do this. And the medical field needs to do this, and it's a money thing in part. The day I got diagnosed with Alzheimer's, even MCI, I should have been able to walk into another room with a social worker, somebody who knew about the disease and who could fill us in and have some reliable materials out there. So I do some blogs. I just put up a new blog today about my anniversaries and parties. You know, it's a first year anniversary of the play. I've done it for a year now, and my birthday coming up. But I think we can. You know, my journey has given me new purpose in life. I've always been that activist, and I think by end of life, I'm in a drug trial, by the way. There may be others. And this is a line from the last line of the play. And I mean, you know, we sign up for every study of the brain that exists, Susan and I, in hopes not only of maybe adding a few years to my life, but maybe helping to find a cure. There is a gift, an act of giving on my part and patients and families. And I hear, oh, it's just too hard, or it's going to be a burden, or I'm not. We can help not only ourselves, but the medical world by going through it. I don't know, but you know something? Maybe my journey will add take off 5 more minutes from the date that the cure will be found. I don't know, but that's what I want to be. That's what I want to do. I don't want to, I don't want to cut it off now and run someplace and drink poison. And I think that also, it's a complicated disease. And we've had to deal with the possibility of agitation. There's a story in the play about Susan insisted we talk to a social worker, and I had not realized that part of my outburst, I have them, scared her. And she couldn't tell me, right? She couldn't say, Sam, I'm afraid you might hurt me. She had to tell the social worker on the computer with me sitting next to her that I was scaring her. What a complicated thing. I couldn't know that. I couldn't imagine. I do now.
And what a great thing to have that resource, to be able to tap into that social worker. Sam, you've made a lot of good points. One, I just kind of want to highlight those. One, you had talked about kind of the myth of you stay at home. We've lived here all our lives. This is where we're going to go. And yet the rest of our lives, if we look in the rearview mirror, we're always adjusting and changing to make our life easier.
Right.
But when disease hits, there is this myth that no, there will be no more change. We are staying planted. And that's something I think that we need to be able to talk about more freely in that. You talked about lifestyle changes versus just a tincture or a pill, or like Tracy said, eating tomatoes. It's not necessarily going to change, but there's a lot of things that can possibly help prevent you or anyone getting the disease. But yet we've heard about triathlons and vegans and people that didn't smoke and drink and that have done all of the above, who have gotten ill, who have aged, who have run into some hard walls. So there isn't a given with any of those things. You had talked about living a meaningful life, and again, I think so often the way disease and illness is looked at is stripped, and doctors don't even know they're doing it. I had a conversation with the doctor the other day on one of my shows, and we were talking about a treatment, and I said, doctors have to be aware of how they are giving this information. And when I told him, a lot of people, when they get a chronic illness, dementia or not, they go out to their car and they cry for 2 hours before they're even capable of driving home. He was shocked to hear that. And yet that is very common. And we have to let them know what the reaction is. And they have to look deeper in terms of their nonverbal communication as well as their verbal communication of what are the next steps. We have to connect the dots. So, a lot of like the myths, the stigmas, the lies, some of it is purposeful, but some of it is just because we are not having authentic conversations and we are not telling each other the impact that we have on one another, which I think is really important. You talked about not wanting to be a burden. That is a phrase everyone talks about. And for myself, I remember having a conversation, and we did one on end of life. And we had some people who were pro at wanting to be able to end their own life. And we had other people that were like, nope, I'm going to live a full life. And I remember people asking me at the very end, Lori, after, and we had like a 2-hour conversation on this, and we had doctors, we had insurance agents, we had people with chronic illness, we had care partners, we had their kids, we had a little bit of everybody on that show. And they said, well, what do you think? And I said, I'm a girl that likes my options. So I would like the option that if I chose that, it was there. But I can tell you, I wouldn't have given up 1 second of the 30 years of caring for my mom. And I wouldn't have wished that on her, because all it taught me to be a better person in terms of how to care. And again, sometimes I don't think we look at that big picture.
Can I tell you real quick,
Mm-hmm.
though? It was in the New York Times, I don't know, probably 4 months ago, an article by 2 cardiologists whose father had dementia and had also been a doctor. And their father, and their story was their father had in some way had seen people with dementia or Alzheimer's and said, if I get like that, don't treat me even if I get sick and curable. Well, time goes by and there it happens. He gets Alzheimer's, I think. But he's in an assisted living community and he's happy. But then he gets pneumonia, and the sons now have to say, do we go with his directive or do we treat him? Because he could not have anticipated he could be happy with the disease. And their point was directive, medical directives shouldn't be so hard and fast. They should have some more flexibility. To have a committee come in or friends decide at the time based on your condition, rather than necessarily never treat me if I get that disease, because we don't know what science will even be like in the future. That was their point. But it's also my point. I will become somebody else. And so I'm a hard no. I'm just, so it's always good to differ a little bit, but I'm a hard no. And with one other reason, I've been, people, you mentioned it, but I used to work for Ralph Nader. He's at 90 and he's still a friend. 6 months ago, I wrote a book about something and he wrote the forward to it. We're still friends, but once something becomes available, there becomes vested interest in doing it. So you can go to Dignitas in Switzerland, pay them $10,000. There'll be interests that want you to do it and can make money off of it. Mm-hmm. So it's a terribly horrible decision to make. I'm not saying I know there's some arrogance in this point of view. I'll admit to it, that I'm not being empathetic enough to some very terrible situations. I'm a hard choose life. That there's some benefit for, but I understand their differences of opinion.
Well, yeah, and there's cultural differences. There's religious and spiritual differences. But one of the things that I know came out of the show that we did was respecting other people's choices instead of a hard line of I'm right, you're wrong. This is the only way to live life, because we all live our lives a little bit different. You also brought up, that doctors should know the answers, and how nice it would be to be able to kind of have that ecosystem where there's a social worker and there's maybe a behavioral psychologist that can really talk about all of the emotions for not only the person diagnosed, but for their family as well, because this is a team sport and we are not handling it like a team sport. This takes everyone to jump in. And so I think a lot of that needs to be clarified as well. You talked about, and I hear this so often from people with chronic illness, how they can step into a space and feel the most purposeful they've ever felt in their life when they start advocating for the disease. I mean, I look at Michael J. Fox and what he has done, and
yes.
He's not a senior. He's probably approaching that right now. But, you look at how successful his life was, and yet he says, this is success now. And he's appreciative of the team he's developed. He appreciates, I think, on a probably, and I've never talked with him, so I'm putting words in his mouth, but on a deeper level, the support his family has been to him. I think with so much of kind of the myths and stigmas, if we can bust those away, if we can believe in hope, if we can believe in betterment, we are able to have deeper communication and deeper connections than are talked about, than we know about. I know I felt that for myself, so there's so much, I think, opportunity, but we can't get there if we don't talk about the myths, if we don't talk about the stigmas, if we don't talk about the lies, if we don't talk about our feelings and the impact that all of these have in allowing people to live their best lives. And when you have that kind of majority rules that, hey, it's doom and gloom and, get ready to check out, I still think about my mom again, with, she lived with dementia for 30 years. People today are still being told, 5 to 7 years. Well, we would have been looking at our stopwatch going, hey, time's up. Come on, the game's right. Over. And we had 30 years of great life together. One thing that we haven't talked about that I would really like to kind of open this up and get both your opinions, and Lance, you as well.
Yeah.
But what is starting to bubble up to the top now is the importance of social engagement and kind of social prescription and the different avenues. If it's art, if it's a support group, if it's play, it doesn't make any difference. If it's, going to church, playing cards with somebody, but having those social connections and the impact that it has, because I think it's been squashed for years. And I will state publicly, and I could be wrong, that it has been squashed because of a lot of the advocates and big money with pharma that doesn't want that to be an option to live a good life. They want it to be the pill. They want it to be the magic bullet. And I personally don't think it will ever be a magic bullet. Even with a pill, there are downsides if you aren't connected. And so, Tracy, what are your thoughts on that?
First of all, I am very appreciative of you bringing up this particular topic. I am a big advocate of getting people out there and socializing and not just crawling into a box and saying no more, no more. From my own family experience, the ones that crawled into the box, actually literally climbed into bed and said, I'm done, and then just wasted away, was really heartbreaking. With my dad, we got him out every single week, getting in to socialize with people. And for 3 years, we had really tremendous success until he had other health issues that prevented that from happening. And it was the most fun we've ever had. And if you don't have a good relationship with your family member that you're taking care of, this is a great place to reconnect with them and to realize that they still have something to contribute. And I am a firm advocate of getting somebody out there and just having fun and not just labeling them. Like Sam said, I am Tracy Perkins and I have an insert X whatever it is. So I'm going to lead my best life. And this is what we can do for them is help people to lead their best lives for whatever it has left. And then you get great memories afterwards, because then look at all the things that you didn't say no to, that you didn't prevent yourself from doing, that because you were in this box and you just couldn't get out of it because you didn't give yourself permission to do so.
Yeah.
You use, Lori, the word prescription, and I don't know whether you meant that intentionally. I was at an event in Tampa at the Straz Theater there, and there was a panel with a guy on it who's an advocate for creating the system to allow doctors to prescribe, actually, like we do medicine, prescribe an art or a dance program and get it paid for and covered, because of everything Tracy just said about it, the impacts and the ability to make a big difference. These are long journeys. I hate the word the longest day, by the way, but
Me too.
but they are long journeys. They, contrary to the, you got it, you're about to die by it, and these things, like you, I just want to jump in because I was not aware of the idea in advocacy to allow in effect a medically prescribed dance session for 6 weeks or drumming. I just saw that in an assisted living place where they were drumming, and because it makes a big difference for folks, and it's so interesting. So thanks for bringing it up.
Well, one of the things, I'm going to go back to Tracy and then I'm going to come back to you, Sam. But Tracy, you had mentioned, even if you don't have a good relationship, because I know, Sam, you had said, it allows you, when you're caring for someone, to build that bond and love. Not everybody has a loving relationship, but there are opportunities to change that and to open the door. And maybe it can't be done. Maybe it was an abusive relationship and continues to be, and it's not healthy. There are some of those out there, and we have to be able to recognize that situation as well. But again, being able to create those memories, and the longest day, for those of you that aren't familiar with dementia, is the summer solstice. And it's always been spun, oh, it's the longest day, and it's kind of that burden. And it drives me crazy because to me, it's like, it's the longest day that gives us the most opportunity to engage and make a positive change. And that's what I try to spin it as. And I'm starting to see some of that kind of twist and turn. Lance, you've been
Yeah.
awful quiet up there, so I
I'm,
know you have
I'm thinking a
opinions.
lot. A couple of thoughts for me, and I think it comes with almost like a stigma where, Sam touched on it briefly, where everybody just thinks when you have dementia, whatever form, most people invariably always go to Alzheimer's, you're at the end stages and you can no longer contribute. But Lori, you, I, us, we've had people on our shows and then even on Conscious Caregiving who were diagnosed and told they can no longer drive a car, and 15 years later they're still driving their car just fine without issue. What I would like to see too is there to be an overhaul of our social media apparatus in this country, or world, if you will, where when people are posting things online, it's almost like with our news now, they are fact checked and they'll put a warning on, this is not true, or this is true, or this is accurate, and provide sources. Because I know for us, we get contacted by so many people and they're lost, they're confused, they're overwhelmed, and we're providing them with information from the NIH or reliable sources to help them on this journey. But I worry not so much about those people as I do the ones who, well, let's just go on Facebook and see what we can find out about X, Y, and Z form of dementia. And you're getting some radical things out there. And, you have people promising, kind of like Tracy with the tomatoes, where they're promising this elixir. And, you take this for, $800 a month, $1,200 a month, and you are going to be A-okay. Where are the protections for these people and the support and trusted resources? And it kind of goes to my personal, flag that I carry up the hill, and that's on social media and people living with dementia. Now, Sam, you could provide consent yourself. You are competent. But what about the people who aren't, who are being exploited? And I don't care if it's for the benefit of awareness and it's a positive light, but I'm worried about the people in a negative light. If you're not connected with that care worker, whatever title you want to give them, in the care home or in the person's private home or in the nursing home or wherever they're at, that care worker wants to film this person with dementia just having a horribly terrible bad day. They're soiled, they're messy, and they're screaming, and they want to share it so that their friends can see what it's like, for them at work that day. We're not protecting these people where there are very easy, quick fixes, not going to solve the problem necessarily, but adding extra layers of protection by simply adding, warnings on post. Hey, this may not be accurate. There is no known cure for Alzheimer's and dementia. Preventing people from posting and exploiting people who can't provide consent to have their likeness, image, or their face posted on social media. We can start at the grassroots of just simple things to protect these people, because these are the things that lead to the myths, stigmas, and lies.
I'm going to add yes.
Yes.
That, it's difficult and complicated. It's funny. I hadn't heard it in the last 3 years, and all of a sudden, past weekend, it came up about somebody taking a picture of or a little video of someone with, actually it was in a support group I was in, and it came up the first time of, if somebody has the disease and is not competent to make their own decisions, should they ever have their picture taken? Can they? My thought was, if I have a lawyer background, that, well, if the person with the power of attorney is around, they can give consent. But if there isn't, then they can't give consent. They can't use it. I had not come across that. But everything you say is right. It is so hard deal with on this social media.
Yeah, and and Sam, you're 100% right. We did a whole panel discussion on that issue. It's my personal flag, like I said. Lori and I actually were just contacted by a university who they were writing a paper on the issue, and this is a university, a well-known university. It's not out yet, so I'm not going to name names, but we will be sharing it when it's posted and published. But the researcher had actually said, I've looked all over and scoured the internet about this very issue, and your show is one of the only things we found that even tackled this issue. I feel like there's something seriously wrong with that if a podcast show, and we're a good show and everybody needs to hit that subscribe button. But if that's what it takes to bring an issue like this, that should be almost a common sense, almost taken for granted that it's already in place to protect these people. There's something seriously wrong with that. But I feel like these are the things that lead to a lot of the stigmas, the myths, and the lies. Because, let's say, a well-known podcaster or influencer decides to say, you know what, my grandma had dementia, guys, and we fed her, garlic and anchovies for a month. And guess what? Grandma doesn't have it anymore. Now you have that going around the internet where people are going to be going to the grocery store and that's where I think, the healthcare system and society is really failing our loved ones and the community that is living with a cognitive issue, a dementia-related diagnosis, whatever you want to call it, and not providing them with accurate, reliable, trusted, vetted resources. And why are we failing in that area? Sam, you're living with dementia, so you can speak to this better than any of us. But let's say you at some point aren't able to, the legal definition, we'll go legally, provide a consent. And, you are outside in your backyard and, you're kind of stripped down and, you don't know any better. And, you got a frat house across the block and they're like, oh man, let's get this, and they post it online. Well, most of your friends and family probably aren't going to be related or connected or following any of those frat boys. And now it's living in infamy on, social media. But there's no protections or safeguards in place. So now somebody comes across that post maybe a week later, a year later, and their mom, their wife, their spouse, whoever it is, just got a diagnosis. And that's the image they think everybody with dementia is going to have. And like Tracy said at the outset of this, discussion, one of my favorite sayings is, if you've seen one person with dementia, you've only seen that one person, because as we all know, it affects everybody dramatically different, or at least it can affect everybody dramatically different. Now they're going to have this bad stigma in their mind. Oh my gosh, grandma, that's the way grandma's going to be, the world's over. But grandma is still of really, for the most part, sound mind, and she might remain that way for years to come. But they've already put that label on grandma, and they've already had that perception going into it of doom and gloom, and this is what our future holds. And we all know that it's not the case, and it doesn't have to be the case. Loved ones with dementia can still live a productive, valuable contribution lifestyle. But we have to allow them to do so and encourage them and support them to do so.
Yeah, just another part of my life. This taps into most of my advocacy life. I dealt with technology. I was very, very early on internet and telecommunications. I support what you're saying now, and I'm aware of the legal complications around it. But people call those disgusting kinds of postings free speech, and they're not.
I agree with it's free speech, but not when you are using somebody's likeness and image without their consent.
It's not just that; it's so complicated right now, and I don't know how to put the whatever back in the box. We need a wholly different regulatory construction for something we've never had before.
Right.
Any one person can talk to the entire world at at one time. And that's never been the case. Up to it was, the media was actually regulated and mediated for a long time, in part for accuracy, in part for all sorts of reasons. I don't know how to put it back together, but the media itself could help voluntarily better. And maybe we need a new regulatory, but either way, you're right. And, the potential for good, like but you also need the content. There are some good things coming out. I am involved with University of Nevada Bruvo Center. There's a relatively new workbook that called Dementia Self-Management Guidebook, available for download to professionals and to get in offices, which has really reliable, good information. I was on an advisory, 5 or 6 of us with the disease were on advisory council. It's been reviewed by, peer reviewed in the medical and dementia world. But this stuff is really hard to get. Every doctor's office should have an equivalent of that. That's the same thing. That's just for us, much less the stuff that's out there and what we're talking about. It's such a challenge. And, I'm sure we know this here, but the baby boomer, the largest generation in our history, I think still, is aging out. I'm 79, I'm 1 year so 78 years old, and 80 years old and older are, let me get it backwards. I'm 1 year, 79 is pre-boomer, I'm by a year. But it's not just us, it's our children who are equally impacted. So the risks that you're outlining are going to explode, right, and are exploding, maybe is a better way to say it. Yeah. So you pointed, I agree with you 100%. We've got to figure out how to and deal with it better, and it impacts people's lives significantly. I think. Thank you for raising that.
We're in kind of a me world. What I do doesn't impact you, and so on social media, people are taking pictures of all kinds of people, not just seniors, not just people that are vulnerable. And people are like, I didn't approve that, but no one feels like they have to ask. Everybody feels like they're a journalist and hiding behind the First Amendment. Right, wrong, or indifferent. That's just kind of, what happened. And when Facebook and Twitter and all that rolled out, no one really thought of how that was going to impact everyone. And it's had a huge effect. I do want to bring up one other thing that we haven't talked about that I think is really important. And I think this is self-imposed by society. And I saw it over and over again when I sold real estate for 25 years, when people did not want to move out of their house because they weren't going to move there because there's old people there. And they could be 90 years old themselves, but they would look at the wheelchairs and the walkers and the gray hair and the wrinkles and, the hunched over, whatever it was. And they did not want to be old. And to me, that is a societal thing that we have, we don't stand up to. I think we're starting to. You're seeing women now going, I'm not doing the Botox. I'm proud of my wrinkles. I'm letting my hair go gray, and they're standing in their own age and seeing beauty and strength within that. Other cultures, other than the US. And again, we're turning into a melting pot, so that is changing as well. But in other cultures, their elders are wise and they guide the family. They're given head seating of everything. and really respected. And here in the US, not so much. And I think that that's something that has to change too, because to say someone, and I'm not just saying this because I turned 65, guys, but it's,
Young lady.
yeah, but it's because I've always reveled in our elders. I've always been fascinated by their individuality. And, I think we have to get back to that and realizing that everyone is a powerful and meaningful human being at all ages. And, that hasn't been the case, especially for our seniors. They talk about feeling invisible, that their voice doesn't matter anymore. Oh, you don't know how to use the computer or the phone, or you're not connected to everything that I'm connected. So what do you contribute? And people aren't looking at the history and the richness of, hey, I know, excuse my language, how the hell we got here. You're missing the history. You're missing that piece of what it used to be like and what it could still be like. And maybe it's a merging of things, but we're not, I just think that that's a societal piece that needs to be changed. And again, I still see that out there a lot. I see the looks, I see the comments. I don't know, Tracy, do you see that too, or is it just me?
Oh no, I see that everywhere. It's unfortunate. Recently I was talking to someone who was in their 20s about how they felt about the youth culture, because that's and why. Also, I don't quite look my age either. Like you, Lori, I look younger than I am, and I was they were shocked to find out, because they thought that I was in my 40s and I am not. And so they were comfortable having this conversation with me until they realized that I am almost 60. And so we had this conversation, and then now that they understand the age difference, and that yes, at times I'm a goofball, but I want to know what they know so that we can actually have a meaningful conversation. Because I was literally standing in a hardware store describing how to make somebody's home more dementia friendly, and somebody just came up and was asking me questions, and again, they were in their 20s and it was for their grandmother. But if you it has to be one person at a time. I think it's a grassroots movement to get people to shift their mindset. And sometimes it takes a bit of a shock to get them to realize, okay, the world is larger than my little purview inside this cell phone. Mm-hmm. And also not understanding where we came from, or the value of folks that, as you mentioned, that are older, that have things to contribute, that aren't just, well, I just don't understand how to use this computer, but I understand many other things, and you are missing this huge thing. That's why your heart is broken. I mean, if you understood the depth of the knowledge that you're missing, think about it. This year, the largest group of baby boomers are retiring. So we are losing a huge amount of people from the workforce. There are not going to be people behind us that are filling that gap, because it's just not happening. People aren't choosing necessarily to work in any industry, whether it's healthcare, medicine. I mean, you look at the number of people that are disappearing from the market. We're going to have kind of I hate to use the term silver tsunami, but we're going to have a lot of people coming back into the workforce and working until their 70s or 80s to fill the positions that are not being filled. And so I think we're going to see people hopefully understanding and changing their mindset and realizing, hey, there is meaning to this, and that we are all meaningful if we treat each other respectfully and understand and teach each other. And I have no issue talking to people and saying, this is the part that you're missing. And if you think about that, maybe you might find the part that you need.
Yeah, that's very true. I think that's very true. Sam, any thoughts you wanted to add on that?
Well, I don't know why, but I never divided my work and my other life. I've always believed in a singularity. I am one person. And so I was calling it my fourth age. I'm about to call it my fifth age. I think this is what you were saying. I think it's true. Used to be that, first age, you'd grow up and go to school. Second age, you would have your profession. Third age, you retire and die. And that was to me sort of like, well, am I a work person or my home person? I've always been me. And I argue that there's a fourth age now. We live this longer time and we have an opportunity. That's my theatrical life. I never imagined I would be, I really started, I did some improv work, which I recommend for everybody on how to be better in life. Improv is how to live a yes and life, but we put that aside. But I had for Ralph Nader, I had a public affairs company. I sold it. Then I had I started working, sort of post-retirement in a contracted position in a social justice program. But then I found my theater. I found this play. The play found me, my first one, through my life experience. And, I'm still doing something, about to be in my 80th year. And I've always been me. It's always been part of me. I think this myth of separation now, and it is driven by now we're driven by what you were saying, that the impact of this aging out of this large, but I think the connection is this large cohort, the large generational, is that there are still things we can do and make a meaningful life, even that retire. I don't even like the word retirement. Because am I retired? Well, I do this as listen, IRS, I do this play as a business. But the business is to get the work out there and to have an impact. Other people do that or, are interested in, caregiving or interested in becoming an artist of some sort. You can have a whole career in that. And I think having purpose for people also is like a medicine for cognitive competency or cognitive strength is maybe a better word to do it. Because I think that's why back to the point of prescriptions for art or art therapy, because all of a sudden you might find that you can draw or you can paint. I don't know if this works for you. I could take my background out and show you guys something. Will that be all right?
Sure.
Okay, I'm gonna.
And one question I didn't answer.
Okay, can I real quick?
Yep.
Do you see this picture behind me right up here?
Mm-hmm.
So that's a picture of what it's like to lose your memory, drawn by a man, given to me the ownership of that art by his widow. He saw my show last year in the Fringe Festival in July. In November, his wife sent me an email and said he passed away. But for both of them, my show had such an effect. She wanted to give me the rights to that picture. And why I'm raising it now is that he was doing that work. It gave him meaning in his life. I could never have imagined that somebody would have given me a picture and I would have had an impact on their life in that way. But there's also maybe a lesson in that. By what you do in your work, that you can affect in a positive way the lives of your community, your family. We've been focusing a little bit on the hard side of it, and it is hard. I get that. I've seen widows. I was with somebody I know who passed away from cognitive decline. I was going to say dementia, cognitive decline. And I'm sitting here and she at his funeral and hearing her say he didn't want to die. He was crawling out of the house or trying to crawl out of the house on his bottom. I'm so glad he's gone. And I found that so hard to understand in some ways. So this aging out, this new thing, finding all, I think people will live longer more predictably and help the economy and keep things going if we can create this ethic or this narrative of, even early retirement or retirement age. I think it's helped me be, the theater helped me and stay where I get, not decline as fast as I probably would have. So it's complicated, but finding the dignity and the meaning and encouraging people to find things to do that they love. Maybe, do you guys ever hear of Joel Jaworski?
Mm-mm.
There's a book, Joel Jaworski. Shoot. I became a fan of his, a groupie of Joel Jaworski. The Inner Path to Leadership is a book, The Inner Path to Leadership. But he offered in that book that if we look back, and I always do this, I turn my head, if you look back at your history and see the median or where you always naturally came back to, that's an arrow to where you should be going. And we don't always know that in the moment, but if we look back and, I always like to go fishing, or I always was in a creative space, or I was always in going to lectures and reading, or maybe you're an author, but it helps you point. And if we could talk to people and encourage them to do that, look back, find out what they love, maybe they'll see a way forward, even in their 80s or 70s. And it gives them energy. I just think we don't have enough of that.
Well, and that's a great point, because a lot of times we give up what we love to earn an income, to take care of a family, to do all of those things. So I think there is great opportunity. You had mentioned about purpose, helps your cognitive decline, but I think it does more than just affects the brain. I think it affects our heart and our soul.
Yes.
Of feeling like we belong.
Absolutely.
and having that sense of tribe. So I know that we need to wrap up here, and I want to go to Tracy and just ask you, what are you hopeful of? I mean, we have kind of gone down the rabbit hole of myths and stigmas and lies, but have you seen change, and what is your hope?
Well, I am seeing a little bit of change, but then I'm in a very small niche here. My hope is that we can make sure that people understand they are not isolated, that we are a community, and that if we give ourselves permission to reach out and connect with people, just like what you're doing on this show right now, is just giving people an idea that there is another way to do this. As Lance mentioned earlier, that you guys were the only show out there talking about a specific topic here. And here we are talking about it right now. It's just understanding that, because it's so isolating, just understanding that there is hope, there is another way. And I like to use the word cognitive resilience. The more socializing you do, the stronger your cognitive resilience. And so I believe it slows down the progression of the disease. I don't know that for a fact, but I just like to think that, because it worked that way in my family, where the more we socialized, the more we got out, the more we played. Play was such an important part. I mean, I in my youth, I did not understand the function of art and dance the way I do now, how it is so engaging. It takes the entire body. It frees the mind. You can use your imagination instead of having to force yourself into logic. And I think that's a part of that our culture has kind of lost our way a little bit.
Yeah, I love that. There's a saying, we are what we eat, but we are what we speak, what we think as well. And that is forgotten. And I think we have to really remember our words and our thought have big, big impact. And when we run across the positive, we need to share that. They always talk about, how the negative travels, 10 times more and 10 times faster than the positive. And we have the ability to shift that narrative, through this whole thing. I'm also going to make one comment. Sam, you had asked me about my use of social prescribing. They're actually are doing that in some pilot programs out there. And the dementia guide through CMS, I believe, is supposed to be tapping into that, but it's still kind of a unorganized mess, I will say, from my perception, in terms of it was supposed to roll out and everyone was supposed to know about it July 1st. And, but it's a massive, massive project to get clinicians understanding, that this stuff is even available, and then connecting them to that, and then getting it to their patients. The systems aren't in place. So I'm hopeful of that myself. But I would like to see that for not just dementia, but for all disease and an aging period. I think we need that with all of our doctor's appointments. Sam, what are you hopeful of, and what kind of change have you seen?
Well, I'm hopeful that the word will be getting out, and that there is a transformation. I think not just a social prescription, that there will be outlets and vehicles supporting work like this, and messaging that will be coming out. The Dementia Friendly America, that I didn't know about, I think is doing some good work, new organizing, new vehicles done responsibly, and positive things. So I do think science is moving forward as well. I like that there are new, not cures, but drugs that can extend and abate some of the symptoms in cognitive and Alzheimer's. So I think we're in a phase of, it is enough of a demand that the resources will come to help meet that demand. That this gigantic cohort of aging people, and we're healthier than earlier generations. My parents died in their 60s, and now here we are about to hit our 80s. So, and we're functional. And so I think the demand for these things that we're describing, I do want to mention real quick. I found recently, how's this for a demonstration? Here's a guy in the midst of all this. And I just recently found alzheimers.gov. I didn't know it was there. So I was trying to find reliable information. I was looking, and alzheimers.gov is a trusted source. But I didn't know. I mean, I beat myself up. How could I not have known about this? And yet I didn't. So I think I'm hopeful that more and more people, and that the government will get behind reliable information sources and get it in the hands of more and more people. State and local agencies providing Frederick County, Maryland, the government, the county area on aging calls itself Aging and Independence, not aging and dying, but a very positive. So those are areas where reliable, good information, and the other places are even daycare. Sounds a bad word, but it's important for adults and seniors. Places, whether within really smart, assisted living or living places, or just government places that you can go to and be active. We're learning a lot, and the demand is there, and it's going to get gigantic. So hopefully part of all that makes me hopeful that the experience for us people, whether just getting old or with disease, I'm reminded, and this will be my last thing, I'm reminded my 50s, I guess I was 50s, maybe late 40s, becoming a parent of a teenager. I had no idea what I was doing. And, I don't know how to get old anymore, much less with the disease. And so, having all these new resources available to us, that makes me hopeful, that the demands being seen, and some of it's, even if there's some of it's for profit, but nonprofit or government. But I guess I'm hopeful about having good, reliable resources. They can be fun and different. And I just said to you, Tracy, that I hope we can get a signed copy of your book, because I've been thinking about every time I see your book in the background is Susan, that she's the home care responsible for my home care. And I know she can get something good out of your book.
Wonderful. Thank you. Well, Tracy, I know you have to drop off because you have an event, so feel free to do that anytime. I'm going to add one thing on. You had mentioned the alzheimer's.gov, which I think, again, is another great resource there. But I think one of the things that I'm hearing the public wanting is they just don't want a government agency or a medical model approach. They want to hear from people like Sam, people like Tracy, who have lived in the trenches. And I'm hopeful that we will start seeing that merge together and they will equal out instead of one thinking they're better than the other, because it really takes all sides in my opinion. Lance, what are your thoughts? What are you hopeful for? What have you seen change?
Change, I think we're seeing it slowly in small increments, but surely. And I'm hopeful that we'll see larger change in larger increments. And I think that takes a village. That takes all of us and, people that are in it for the right reasons. And what I mean by that is so many times it just feels like, like you said, Lori, it's me, me, me. And it's all about, how can I get the likes, the shares, and the engagement, and find the reason. Find your why. Why are you doing this and what are you hoping to get out of it? Because I feel like when you're dealing with an issue like dementia, Alzheimer's, or really any other long-term care illness, you're dealing with people's lives, their emotions, and, we need to be there for them. Put yourself and your needs aside, do good work, and I feel like the rest will just come in stride for you. So that's what my hope is.
Yeah.
Amen.
Yep.
Thank you, Sam.
The seniors come in all shapes and sizes, and they should be supported at all different levels.
Right.
Disease or not, personality styles or not. I mean, we have to start caring for one another better, and we have to look at, like you said, the bigger circle. We're not an island of one, and we've done a lot of harm with that mindset, I think.
Yeah.
So I've just been thrilled with this conversation today. So thank you. A big thank you to Tracy, again, who had to leave, and to Sam, and of course to Lance. I love doing this
Thank
show.
You,
so
yeah. Thank you, Sam.
It's good to meet. I had not met. This is my first time to meet Lance. It was so great to do it. I want to go to Detroit and
come on over.
Do the show up there, and I get so much. Now, I'm going to mention this and if you guys want to keep it or not, it's but because it's come up a lot lately. I do a discussion after every show, and I think all but one, I've done about 40 shows now. Within the first 3 comments from people, and I, again, could never have anticipated this because I've never lived in this world before, right? I mean, I'm still learning how to be a person with Alzheimer's disease and cognitive decline. But what I surprised me what I hear is that so many people said, thank me. It's almost always the first, second, third comment. Thanking me for helping them understand what was going on or what they think was going on in the head of their loved one. That people, when they get to the point that I become someone else, well, it's someone else, the person they care for in their home, their husbands or aunts or uncles. Somebody's not been, sees them behave in ways they don't understand. I think one of the gifts of my show that I would not have known is the opportunity to understand a little bit better what might be going on. I couldn't have anticipated it. It scared me at first. It's better because of medicine, but I call it the nothingness place, where I would try to remember something and all of a sudden it was like I was floating in deep space. I just couldn't get an answer. I couldn't, but then it would pass. It changes. But that what I hear is how people see that in what they were seeing. And so I encourage people to find art or shows, not just mine. I'm sure there are other resources to particularly loved ones, and the need for respite, the need for, Susan, we're good now. She does need to get out for a while. And I'm good enough to be left alone by myself. And with my dog, I don't know if you've been hearing him, Sparky. Beyond that, so thank you guys. Thank you for what you do.
Thank you, Sam.
Thank you.
Thank you again for joining us here at Conscious Caregiving with L&L, where we're tackling the tough conversations. We look forward to seeing you again next month.